Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened. This week, Denise and I are very happy to announce a new guest on our show. She is Jillian Wilde. She's an intuitive soul, a visual artist, a writer, and a conjurer of the imagination. She's also the creator of the Naked Heart Tarot. Always a creative person, Jillian veered from this path to focus on a career until a car accident changed everything for her. Dealing with struggles and anxiety from this and working in a career that no longer served her soul, she prayed one day to the universe, asking, please show me what I am meant to do for a living that would make me happy and help others. She asked this question, she let this question go, and she surrendered herself completely with no attachment to the outcome. She then began a wonderful journey where she returned to her artistic roots and began studying spirituality. Jillian soon felt called to create a tarot deck, and she says that during this painful time, creativity was her painkiller. I love that phrase. One day a friend said to her, I feel, Jillian, that when you finish this tarot deck that your pain will be gone, and it was. So she was able to blend beautifully her creative and intuitive roots onto her path of healing. So welcome so much to the show, Jillian. We're excited to talk to you about your journey and about this beautiful deck you've created, the Naked Heart Tarot. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. And hello, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
Denise, you had something you wanted to start with.
I did. The deck comes in this beautiful, beautiful packaging. It's a very unique deck. But there's a card when you first open it, and it says the Naked Heart Tarot. This deck has been created and set with the intention of providing healing energy, clarity, guidance, and truth. Each card provides insight into the naked heart, where ego is extinguished and purity of light flows within you. I'm glad we found each other. Much love, Jillian Wilde. And that so captures the deck and also captures the energy that you've channeled into this deck, because every time I pick these up, and they're a good deck you can bond with them very quickly. And anyone who does cards knows exactly what I'm talking about, that certain decks you can build a relationship with very, very, very quickly. But each card has so that channeled feeling. And that was one of my very first questions I want to ask is, how much of this do you feel you channeled collaboratively with Divine?
That's a very interesting question. And thinking back to when everything was being created, there's different ways that messages would come to me. And one of my I always keep saying I have a muggle world and a spiritual world, but I feel like in my muggle world or my human world, there was a lot of research that went into the deck. And that's something that I really feel called to, is really understanding things. So I feel like there was a combination of both things happening. So there was definitely some research and understanding to get the depth of these cards, but there was a lot of channeling that was happening as well, because I would get flashes of inspiration that would sort of pop in, and it was a very solidified knowing that was what was supposed to appear on the card. One card that comes to mind for me is the Strength card, and it's a griffin. And this deck was actually inspired by the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So a lot of the imagery is also taken from that, because I wanted to be able to communicate the message in a way that anybody that works with the Rider-Waite deck would be able to pull and work from that deck as well. But the way that the images would morph came through channeling and came through research too. It was what are the dominant imagery, on the Rider-Waite-Smith that makes sense? What is the main message of this? And I feel like for me, a lot of the channeling came through the animals, because I wouldn't even understand why sometimes I was choosing the animals that I was. And a lot of times the animal imagery would come up before I had even done research into necessarily what those animals meant, or how other people had perceived them too. So it was interesting for me to see that combination of everything come together.
I love when that happens.
Yeah,
I really do.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. And the funny thing is too, and I'm sure you both can relate, that when you're channeling, you don't even know you're doing it sometimes. Like,
Exactly.
I think for me, I think like clairaudience is something that's really is one of my stronger clairs. And I think it's been around for so long for me that I feel like it happens and I don't know what's actually happening.
And that's exactly what it's like. Is in Samantha, don't you find that when you're doing a reading and things just kind of fly out of your mouth and they're just it's it's
They're
coming
just
through
there.
us, not from us, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is really, really cool stuff.
It's the best place to be. That's where miracles are rooted and born.
That's right.
Well, Jillian, we always like to ask people, there's another podcast I love that I listen to called Rune Soup, and he begins every interview show with a question, were you the weird kid in your family? So I don't want to ask if you were the weird kid, but I would like to ask if you could talk to us, were you always creative and spiritual as a child, and how did your journey progress from there?
So I wouldn't say that I was necessarily the weird kid in my family, but I would say that I was probably the one that was more verbal about what was going on for me. So ever since I was a little girl, I was like continually getting premonitions about stuff. Things would constantly happen. And in my family, it wasn't really something that was talked about. Like my mom definitely has abilities. It's come down from my grandmother's side of the family. My father's side of the family is a bit more closed about talking about that kind of stuff, but I definitely think that my father's side of the family has like a lot of that ability as well. And I think when I was younger, like a big part of my journey, and I've heard this from a lot of people too, because the more open I am about it, I feel like the more information I'm also receiving back from people. But one of the things that happened with me is that a lot of the premonitions and everything that messages that I was receiving always seemed to be negative. And it kept getting more and more negative information that I was receiving. And it was scary to me because I was really young. And I remember one time having this really, really, really strong feeling about something that was occurring in our family. And I remember mentioning it to my grandmother at the time. And for like, I love my grandmother. She is like a kindred soul to me. And we were very, very close. But I remember my grandma saying to me at the time, like, we don't talk like that. You don't say stuff like that. And for me, it was just, sharing a message of something that I felt like really strongly about. And I think I was probably about 8 years old at the time when I had said that to her. So I think the feedback about, sharing that information wasn't really, it's hard for me to say this because I feel like it wasn't nurtured, but it's also hard for me to say that because I don't want to speak ill of my grandmother because I love my grandmother so much. But I think there's just a time where that maybe that there's fear or protection or something that was going on from the other end of it that had to quickly shut that conversation down because it didn't resonate or feel comfortable. And for me as an 8-year-old, it was kind of like I didn't know what to do, and I certainly didn't know if I had so many people I could really talk to about what was going on for me. And as I got older, the messages kept getting more negative and stronger and more negative. And I use the word negative because for me at the time, the messages seemed really scary. And I think knowing what I know now, and having come further in my spiritual development, I don't see the messages as necessarily they were so negative. They're more heavy information to pass on. So, like for instance, one of the messages that came through for me later in my life, I would think I was in my early 20s when it had happened, and it was a message about my partner at the time, his mother being really sick or his grandmother being really sick. And I had this very distinctive dream that, that this had happened and that his mom's mother was in the hospital sick. And then when I had communicated the message, it kind of got lost. Like he thought he had already told me about that information and I hadn't told him about the information. And then the way it was received, it was kind of scary for everybody at the time because it was like, how do you know this information? And I was kind of like, I'm just communicating what I thought was maybe a dream at the time. So it wasn't feeling that big to me. And then that was another occurrence that had quite scared me at the time. So that was kind of it for me. After that time, I had just said, okay, I've had enough. I'm shutting this off. I don't want this anymore, because I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to use the information that I was getting in a way that was helpful. And I didn't know that the information that I was getting was actually messages and information. So it was very confusing for me.
I find that such a common theme, that those of us who are intuitive and empathic and creative, we have that period in childhood where we're getting all these messages. Often they're negative. And I always explain to people that the messages to a raw intuitive are often negative, because those are the easiest ones to come through. You know, they're
Right.
vibrating at the same density of our earth energy. And as we learn to set boundaries and open and close our energy, we can and do get more of the positive information. But so often we make that decision, usually in our teens, to just shut this off and shut it down. And so then you had a very impactful experience 4 years before you created this deck that kind of made you open this back up. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. It was, I think, a lot of the, I don't want to say that everything had shut it down completely, because I don't think that's true. I think maybe messages were still coming through, but they were a lot softer, and they weren't in more of a dominating voice or a very strong dream or that kind of stuff. So I think there was still, obviously my intuition, I think, is still active. I don't think that ever truly goes away, but I was working in a career that I wasn't very happy in, and a bunch of stuff was going on in my life. And I just, every time I got into my car, I kept hearing this message: car accident, car accident, car accident. And I was like, okay, like, I didn't know why it kept popping up. And I think at the time too, it was, I don't really know if what I'm hearing is spirit or, you know, like, not maybe necessarily connecting the dots, but it was very prominent, and it just kept happening every time I got in the car. And it went on for about a couple of weeks, and I just thought, you know, what is this? And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, car accident. When I look back at it, I was like, of course, it was serving as, you know, for me, a warning sign that something was coming. Sorry, what was your question again? Because I feel like I'm about to trail off.
Yes, and I just wanted you to explain to people how the car accident ironically got you back on track.
Okay, yes, okay, so I was going in the right direction. So the car accident happened, and I was quite injured from it. It wasn't a car accident that was, you know, it wasn't near death or anything close to that, but it did definitely cause me some severe injuries. And I could feel my life really changing from it, like completely changing from it. I was very active before my car accident. I was training for a triathlon, and I was very physical, and I was spending a lot of time outside and just doing different things that I enjoyed that way. And after the car accident, it kind of left me, so I wasn't able to run anymore. I wasn't able to ride my bike, and I wasn't doing the things that were current in my life that were fun for me. And I could just see my life changing, like relationships with people were changing because of it, because you have your active friends and those people that you spend time with. And I could just see things just shifting, and I wasn't feeling happy. And then I was in a job where I was just traveling a lot and doing a lot of things that just, it really was a great job. It just didn't resonate with me. And I just was really just feeling down and out, because I was like, I'm starting to feel like I don't recognize my life anymore. I don't recognize the things that make me feel good. And I just was getting to a point that I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, this isn't me. This isn't how I feel. And I can still remember the day very, very clearly, deciding that I was just like, that's it. I've had enough. I've had enough of this. And I got on my knees and I prayed. Like, I prayed like I never prayed before. And it was just like, just please show me. Because I just felt lost. I was really lost. And it's not to say that my life, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't miserable. But spiritually, I knew I felt lost. I knew that that something just wasn't clicking the way it should have been. And I just asked, and I was just like, can you please show me the way, show me what I'm meant to do for a living that will help heal others and help make me happy. And I can remember so much at that time, and I still look back at it and I'm like, where all the stars aligned, was the message was received, everything. I don't know, it was just seemed like in divine timing, it just seemed so purely perfect the way that everything got executed after that. And I gave it away. And I think for the first time ever in my life, that surrender was really pure. It didn't matter to me what anybody else thought. Like, it just didn't matter. It was a pure surrender. And after that, I made some decisions. I decided to quit my job where I was. I aligned myself with another job that definitely wasn't my dream job or anything that I was madly in love with doing. But I just thought, I have to make ends meet while I try to figure this out. But I knew that some action had to be taken too. And yeah, so I just started to really just make some changes that weren't necessarily like the changes that I was super excited about, but I just knew things had to shift and I knew it couldn't stay the way I was. So for me, I just started to really, I was just like, I'm just going to start doing the things that interest me. And I was back interested in my spiritual path, and I just started reading stuff. And the journey was, when I look back at it, it feels like it went like by with like the speed of light, but like going through it, I feel like there was a lot of baby steps. I wanted to learn about the chakras, and that felt comfortable and resonated with me. So I would start reading about that and start, just diving into that world. And then I started just drawing again. I was like, I'm just going to sit down and draw, and I want to draw. And, I like doing that. And I didn't really have anything in particular in mind that I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden the images that came up with it, and I would be like, oh, how can I make art and the spiritual stuff combined together? So it had started there for me, really. I think this was a big part of me starting to open up. When I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, it absolutely makes sense, because I really did a lot of research into the chakras, and then I started to I did 7 paintings, one image that aligned with each chakra, and I spent weeks working on them. And I feel like at the time I really worked through the chakras, my own chakra system, going through it. So when I look back at even the energy, I remember so many different emotions coming up for me when I was working on each individual painting and different that coordinated with each chakra. And it was just different stuff. Like, I can remember painting for weeks and just feeling like super angry thoughts coming through my head, and anger. But even though I was still enjoying what I was doing, there was a lot of negativity there. So I feel like there was a lot of stuff that was being processed or released and let go as I was working through that. I still didn't know really what any of it meant. I just knew that I was enjoying what I was doing. Samantha, when you were reading my bio, there was no attachment. Like you mentioned, there was no attachment there for me. And there was no attachment. I didn't know what any of it meant. I wasn't afraid. There really wasn't a fear there. There was more this curiosity and excitement, and I just wanted to keep following it. When I got to the end of creating the chakras, well, what do I do with this now? What's next, kind of thing? And I kept reading more books on different stuff that I was really enjoying. And there's got to be a writing piece that maybe works with this. And I kind of started off children's books. They were little goddesses that I created, and they all had the different attributes that resonate with that are coordinated with the chakras. Maybe there's a way I can write this and try and communicate this to children. Maybe there's some sort of story that goes with this little chakra goddess. And, so I started doing that, and then I made some attempts and wrote some books, and then was like, nope, these aren't right. I don't like them. And then the next thing, okay, well, I'm going to move on to maybe doing a novel. So I started to attempt to do that. And then it was constantly I would go so far, and then I would hit a wall with it. And then when I'd hit the wall with it, usually I think there would be a bit of a sense of frustration that it's I can't get past this, or I need to push past this, that pushing against the grain kind of feeling. But for me in this journey, it wasn't like that. Okay, this is where I'm at. Let it go and see if something else comes up.
And I think you just made some really, really, really important points, Jillian, in the sense that you left the job that was toxic, but then you got another job to support what you were doing so that you could, I'm seeing you having duality. You're doing your day job so that you could start this creative process. And when you said that surrender, so many times over and over and over, this comes up with folks that we talk to, or people that I'm doing readings with, or other intuitives that I talk to. You hit that flatline place where it's just I don't know what to do, please help me. and that gets the ball rolling. Like, and that's exactly what you were just saying, that you got out of the way, you said, put me in the right direction, and you let it evolve in the direction that it was intended to. You didn't force any of it. I love that.
Yeah, and that it is. And like for me, even sometimes I look back and I honestly, I'm like, how did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did I surrender that much? Because it's not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing to do. I think especially when you feel like you don't know exactly what's going to come, it can feel really scary. I just want to be done the journey to know what it's going to be like, so you can have some comfort in that.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that you and Samantha both have that gift of being artistic and being able to channel images. And Samantha, I'd love to hear your point on that, as far as, using that creative muse and the channeling. And I don't know.
Well, I think it's a
I
way
don't have
to
it.
allow your intuition to come in. When Russell Tark and the head honchos who created remote viewing for, government spies or government psychic spies, whatever you want to call it, the way they would teach the remote viewing is they would have them sketch, just very generally just sketch. And the reason why they did that is because they have found it's the best way to get your ego, your monkey mind, your conscious self out of the way. And so I think when we engage in the creative, we're allowing the person that's Jillian and driving to work and, not really loving her job, or Samantha who's driving her kids everywhere or folding laundry constantly, to get out of the way so that the divine Jillian or the divine Samantha or the divine Denise can come through. To me, it's just one way to push the ego away for that moment.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that too. Even now when sometimes it's almost like I want to draw, but you kind of can get into that little bit of a procrastination mode. And then as soon as I sit down and draw, I'm like, why wasn't I doing that before? It's such a different world, right? Why did I wait so long to get to this place of peace?
It's so true. I love that quote by Jillian something where it says the creative adult is the child who survived.
Yep.
I really feel that creativity is a way for us to make sense of our lives and our path. And I do think it's just another way for the divine spark in us to come forth. And I don't think it has to be creative stuff like drawing or painting. I think it can be writing, gardening, baking, knitting, woodworking.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you feel connected to your heart, you allow for a different space to be present.
Ooh, that's quotable, Jillian. That's good. I like that. Well, tell us how you got connected with the tarot. Do you feel that you sought out the tarot, or do you feel that it found you?
After the chakras, maybe I'm supposed to tap into more of my psychic stuff, maybe that's what. So I got interested in that, and then I sought out of like a lot of different groups and stuff. And for me at the time, it felt so ungrounding. It almost scared me more. I don't know, like I didn't know what to take of it, and I didn't know what to make of some people. And it's certainly not a judgment thing, but I don't know what to take of all of this. It felt very overwhelming to me, and it felt really ungrounded. So I kind of stopped that too. Like took a step back, and it was like, maybe I just don't want everybody else's opinions. I just want to keep following what's of interest to me, because I didn't really know which way I was going in my spirituality either. I didn't know what any of it had looked like. So I kept going in that direction. I started to create. So the books didn't work out. They hadn't worked out yet. And then the next step for me was, I don't know where it even came from. I can't even think about it. But the next thing was, I'm going to create an oracle deck. It just came up. So I was like, yep, okay, I will. So that aligned with more stuff that I was interested in at the time. A lot of like First Nations spirituality and all these different mergings of animals and humans and all this stuff that I was creating. And I kept going with that. And the next thing you know, I was creating like these super large pieces. And like I kind of got against a wall again. And I was like, okay, now what? Like I've started this, but now where is it going? And then just like all the other projects out of nowhere, it was like, boom, took me back to, I call it tarot, but I think your American accent is so beautiful the way you call it tarot. So yeah, it just happened. It just happened. Like every other piece happened in this journey. It just happened. It just showed up. Okay, well, yeah, okay, we'll go back there then. I started to create this deck, and originally when I was drawing it, it was in black and white. So it was all ink drawings, and that's what I thought was going to be right. And so I went with it. And not long after, I think maybe about 12 cards in or so, my original injuries that I had from the car accident were extremely exacerbated and got much, much worse. I was unable to walk. I found myself within about a couple months of them getting really bad, I was on crutches. I wasn't able to walk, and things just continually got worse. And when I look back at it now, that same block that kept coming up for me, that was like I couldn't get farther with the other projects, it opened up for me. Like the idea of, that time that you need to create this, we're going to give that to you. Even though it was in a very extremely painful way at the time, when I look back now, there's no other way. There's no other way. There's no other way I could have found time to create this deck.
Wow, another story, Denise, of pain being the doorway to true, authentic living. That's fascinating. How do you come to the tarot? Do you come to the tarot from like a Jungian archetypal point of view, or do you come to it from a sacred, symbolic point of view, or just as a tool for divination? How do you connect with it?
I'm attracted and feel called to all those things that you were just mentioning. I think, are you asking me personally, how do I use it, or how did I create it?
How did you create it?
So I think for me, when I had started this, because as you know, reading cards, it's a forever long process. I don't think it's, there's always new stuff that's unfolding with it, and new stuff that comes to light for you. And I think when I got onto this path of starting to create this, that's when I found that there was a lot of disjointed information everywhere. Holy smokes, I'm trying to learn this, I'm channeling some of this stuff, and I'm how do I make sense of this all? There's a lot to this. And I thought that for me, that was one of the very inspiring things, because I love research and I love to dive into things. I love to know why. I have a curious mind like a cat. And so I just dive into stuff, but I really wanted to have something. As a beginner, I felt this shouldn't be this hard. That was something that really went through my head. Put that, and I don't want to say simplicity as to dumb down the idea of how much context there is and content there is in the tarot, but I just wanted it to feel maybe a little less overwhelming for people. The symbology of stuff was really important. The symbolism was really important. The way the energy of the card spoke was really important. I didn't want it to feel, how sometimes you can look at a tarot card and you're like, there's so much going on here that it's it almost distracts you from what the messages that's coming through, because you can get too caught up in what the card images are going on. And I didn't want that feeling. I wanted that feeling to be able to look at the card and, yeah, boom, I understand that message. I got it. I wanted the cards to speak really clearly so that your own intuition and whatever was coming through for you could be guided instead of feeling like you were hiccuping over what the meaning of the card was.
What I love is, yes, your cards are very clear, succinct, the visuals, but in the guidebook there's so much information. So you've really elaborated on each card. You've added so much information that it showcases how much research you had to have put into this project. I'm going to the pragmatic side of my brain for a minute, because it is a wealth of information that people will, I just randomly opened the book to the Temperance card, and you have the meanings, the message, you describe the card, but then you also talk about all of the symbolic keys that are on the card and what they mean. So not only is this applicable to the deck itself, but it goes back to what you said about the Rider-Waite deck, that there are certain symbols throughout all of the tarot or tarot, whichever one, that are really, they're universal. It's similar to the universal signs we get as intuitives or mediums, and I think that's a really nice gift that you added in with the cards. Not only that people can get their intuitive meaning from the visual, but also have this incredible fund of knowledge to to dive a little bit deeper into the meaning.
Well, thank you. And, that's something that was important to me in building this too. I didn't want to just do, how do I say this? It's like everybody builds their own symbol dictionary, but like you just said, there's universal meanings to symbols as well. So I wanted it to have that information present too. So it wasn't, what does all this mean?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
How did you come to rename some of the cards? Like the Hierophant is the sage in your deck, which I think is a wonderful name for that card. Did you feel funny renaming those, or was it just, no, this needs to be switched?
Yeah, so the first edition, the Hierophant is actually called the Hierophant, and in the second edition, it got switched to the Sage. And I think when I was doing this deck, I had no idea that this independent world of tarot existed. No idea. Things were more unfolding as I was going through, so there was like some hesitations, I think, there too. How is it okay for me to rename a card from a system that's already been put in place? There was a bit of hesitation and a bit of unsurance, like if I should do that or not. Then there was things for me that just made sense to do it. The Emperor and the Empress, the names of those cards just felt outdated to me. And I felt the way I was building this deck, the Emperor is now called Skyfather, and the Empress is Earth Mother. It just seemed more of the times. It just seemed more fitting with, I think, maybe how we speak about things now.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and that this aligns more with the energy you're bringing in by switching out a couple of the names too. And with, globally, there's so much, we're moving in a new direction. We're evolving in a new direction, culturally, socially, personally, and I think that this is reflective of that. Plus, it exemplifies the importance of the earth energy to you in these cards and your connection with the animals and with spirit and with, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's, on that point, there's that kind of that feeling, I think, that comes with it. Well, who am I to make this change? It's like, who am I to do that? So for me, I second guess, like, who am I in this whole picture to be able to just go ahead and change a card name?
Okay, and that is weird as hell that you just said that, because that has been coming up for so many highly sensitive people lately. Well, why me? Why would they want to hear what I have to say? Or why would they read my book? Or why would they? And I think that that's really interesting the way you put that, because that has been such a prevalent theme for so many folks I've talked to recently. Of not, okay, I'm ready to step into my power, but who the hell's going to care anyway?
Yeah, and I think that was something that's come up for me too. Like, I had no idea what was going to happen with this deck. I had no idea. But there was something for me, 100%, this is what I meant to do.
That is so cool.
When you were creating the deck, did you start with the Fool card and go all the way in order, or did images come to you and you would create a card around the image?
I started from the Fool and worked my way through.
That's probably how I would do it too, because the tarot is created in a journey, and it's the hero's journey really in the deck, in my opinion. So that makes sense. Did you ever get images for the cards and go, I don't know about that, or did you just surrender and trust each step of the way?
Oh yeah, there was definitely some cards that I started doing, and it's almost, I think the best way to say it would be, maybe I forced the image more, and it wasn't quite, the download hadn't quite caught up to me yet. And when I would start something, I'd be like, this is not working. This card's not working. Something about it's just not right. And that's when I would stop and just give myself permission to, well, it's not working. Just stop and wait. But that was kind of a thing for me. It was like I never moved on to the next card until that image was ready.
How long did it take you to do it?
Initial deck took me 1.5 years to make.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say an interesting story that came up for me on the path of surrender. So I think I had mentioned when I first started doing the deck, it was all in black and white. And as you both can see now, there's color images in there. And one of the things that came up for me was I kept getting this little voice that's saying, I want to create in color. I want to create in color. And I was like, okay, little voice. So then I just kind of ignored it. And then it was like getting stronger. So I was like, okay. I'm just going to take a break from creating this deck now. And I'm just going to draw some stuff in color. So I decided to do that. And I all these images that I think I did 2 or 3 pieces. I was like, I'll just take a break and do that. And then I was loving what I was creating. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to go back to working on the deck. I had got to the hangman in the deck. I was getting excited because I could see that, so many cards had been created at this point. And I got there and I thought, I'm just going to scan these cards into the computer and put them into a template because I just wanted to see what it looked like. And when I had done all of that, I realized that the card size didn't fit in the template. It didn't work. I had mismeasured. And I had done so many measurements from the get-go too, being like, this has to make sure this right, because otherwise I won't be able to shrink it down. And I had just finished working on the hangman at that time and shrunk it down. It didn't work. And I remember like very vividly sitting and staring at the hangman with my head in my hands, looking at this hangman going, how have I done all this work and it doesn't work? I felt like a little bit crushed, and I just sat there and sat with it, and I just thought, and then all of a sudden it was like a little light bulb that went off, and it was like, oh my God, I'm staring at the hangman. Like, I have to surrender this. There's a different perspective. There's something that's different point of view on this. So, and it, as the hangman means, don't like make any sudden actions. And it was just like, I just have to sit with this. I have to sit with this. And then all of a sudden it was like, click, 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 creating color. So I had already done quite a few of the cards in the deck, and then it was like I'd started again.
Wow. That's trust with surrender. And for people who don't have the deck, on the Hanged Man in the Naked Heart Tarot deck, it's a bat hanging upside down. And I love the symbology of the bat for the Hanged Man because it reminds me of nighttime and how so often during those dark nights of the soul, all we can do is surrender.
That's right. And it's a different, I think when you're seeking a different perspective, it comes from a different place. It's like I very much relate to the moon card. It's like feeling your way out of a position, or feeling your way through an emotion, or feeling your way out of the darkness, opposed to trying to see your way out of the darkness.
Now, do you have a favorite card in the deck that you created?
Art-wise?
Yes.
My favorite art card is the Magician.
Oh, very nice. Okay, this is the one with the eye, and there's so much symbolism on that card. You've got all the tools of the deck, and then you have this big eye looking at you. Explain what you love about that card.
I think there's something, I don't know, for me, it just feels kind of magical in a way. And I feel like that's how the Magician should feel. It's got this little piece of magic. I just like the way it came together. I don't know if I have a real reason why. I just like the way it looks, and I feel like it kind of draws you into that.
I like the symbolism that you put into there. It's multi-layers. I mean, in this one, for example, you've got the tools of the tarot in the triangular pyramid shape with the eye. Yeah. And you've got, but I love like the High Priestess. You've got the owl for wisdom. And, you've got all these beautiful symbols around it, and the hand of, what is that hand called?
The hand of Hamsa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I love the symbols that are multi-layered on each card.
Oh, thank you.
Denise, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no. I was going to just make the comment about, with the Magician, one of the really basic meanings of that card is you have all the tools you need to move forward. And when the first time I saw that card, and saw the eye, at first I thought, I love the colors that you used in that, because it's an eye you would be drawn into. If you met someone who looked back at you with those eyes, you'd fall right into those eyes.
Oh, thank you.
But it also, my first thought was, you have all the tools you need, and you need to trust your intuition to use them. So very, very cool.
Now, if that's your favorite card that you painted and created, what's your favorite card in the deck of tarot? Just for you personally?
Oh, I think, everybody has the ones that they love to pop up and see, right? The Lover's card.
Yes.
Favorite. I don't know if I have necessarily an actual favorite card. It's like, because I can even tell you that I love the Tower. As much as it is a fearful card to see, that something amazing is going to come out of it. think that there's more like how you can interpret the message to have some positive influence on your life. I think that's more
Well,
what I'm on to.
I was going to ask you, what do you think is the most misunderstood card in the deck? And I think the Tower card is one of those. Do you want to talk about the positive sides of that for a moment?
Yeah, and I agree. I think, okay, well, here's a very good example. When I was drawing the Tower card, I didn't want to do it because there was several cards at that point that were coming through for me in real life. Like I was living this deck as I was creating it too. And when I got to the Tower, I was like, no, I'm not ready. Like life's throwing enough at me right now. I'm not ready to have more stuff thrown at me. And I was feeling a little bit terrified that this card was going to come to life for me. So I was like, I'm not ready. And then I had to sit with this card for a long time. And I thought, there's got to be something to this card that it's not so scary. And I kept researching and just kept sitting with the information. And then it just occurred to me that mass devastation brings new growth. And without it, life's not possible. Even if you look back from the evolution of the Ice Age and the dinosaurs being wiped out and all that kind of stuff, we cannot evolve without mass destruction. So for me, in those dark and painful moments, because that's when the most beautiful things arise.
Ooh. Okay, and I know there are so many people, I love that description, by the way, very well put.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people listening that want to know what happened with your physical as you worked through the cards, and and that's really cool that you said you lived your way through the deck as you created it. And so much of the process you're talking about, it feels very similar to, you gave birth to this deck. You went through the stages of a pregnancy. You went into labor. You birthed this very much so, birthed this creative project. But when did your physical health, because I'm thinking back at the beginning of the story and the accident, and then it got worse and you couldn't walk, and then you were, so someone had told you at the beginning, when you get to the end of this, you'll be healed. So I'd love to, if there's a connection there, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, when my girlfriend had said that to me at the time, that it was, I wanted to hold on to hope so bad that was true, but it felt painful to hear it at the time, because I was just like, I don't know if that's, I'd love that to be true, but I don't know if that's actually what's going to happen. And I just kept creating and kept working through it. And like literally on the last card is when I had given up my cane. So wow. I had been on crutches and on a cane, slowly, progressively getting better over the time. But yeah, at the time the last card was drawn is when I was like, okay, I don't need this anymore.
So you went from a triathlete to basically being incapacitated and fearful of not being able to walk fully again on your own.
Yep.
To working through this progress and getting to the point with a cane, and then now you have no residual stuff?
I wouldn't say that I'm pain-free by any means, but I am walking normal. I have the ability to ride my bike again. All of those things have come back. With my injuries, there's some things that will never fully repair themselves, but I mean, yeah, I'm living and functioning in a very normal life, yeah.
And it's a really inspiring story, Jillian, truly.
Well, I think, it's as much as I feel like this is meant to be what I'm supposed to be doing, I also feel like it saved my life in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because without my art and without my creativity, that's when I think I have felt the most lost in my life. And to be connected to it, it's like, it really feels like it allows who I am to come through. So I feel very, very grateful for, as hard as that time was. I feel very grateful that was a gift. Like, that's a true Tower moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great reminder that we all need to stay rooted and connected to our true self and our true gifts so that we can do what we came here to do.
Yep.
Now, do you feel that using the tarot is your go-to for getting intuitive information for yourself, or do you also get intuitive information through your artwork, through dreams? What are some of your favorite ways to get intuitive guidance just for you?
So I think my clairaudience just speaks up when it speaks up. Like I said earlier, I think that's like my most dominant clair out of them all. Dreams come up for me a lot. That's definitely something that manifests into the real world a lot for me. I think my creativity allows me to develop those other skills better. I don't know how to explain it. It's like when I'm being creative, I feel connected. I feel grounded. I feel calm. And the more connected I feel like I am to my art, I feel like that other stuff comes through for me way easier just in other times, whether it's reading for somebody or puttering around the house or whatever it is. I feel like my clairs are a lot more active when I'm drawing, but not during the time of drawing, just when I'm like in active practice of drawing.
Do you have any cool stories where clairaudience popped up for you and helped redirect you?
Yes, you know what? I was just listening to your episode with John Holland on it. That one. And I just started working on a new deck. And what's the name of his book? Bridging Two Realms?
Yes.
Well, I was working on one of the cards. I don't want to give too much away, but I was working on one of the cards that and I thought, I was just about to put some imagery into the background, and my human side was like, well, visually, this looks better. That might look better. But I could feel this little bit of a tug of war going on within me, and well, maybe I should be doing something else. And then all of a sudden, okay, I'm just going to tell you. I was working on a butterfly, because this story will make more sense if I tell you what I was working on. So I was working on a butterfly, and I thought, what I'm going to put into the background for this. And I just finished listening to that episode with you guys, and all of a sudden, I hear the words "bridge between two realms" go through my head, and I thought, wait a second. I think I'm just hearing that because I just was listening to that. And then I thought, no, you're not. You heard that as a very clear, this is what you're supposed to put into the background, because one of the significances with the butterfly is that in one of, in First Nations culture, you give the butterfly your prayers and wishes and send them off to the Great Spirit. So they're the bridge between the two realms.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so I was like, of course, this is supposed to be, the background is supposed to be more bridging between the two worlds opposed to what my human design part wanted to put in.
That's so cool. I'm glad we could be a part of that too.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. So it's funny because that's that sometimes where you like, it's easy to second guess that, it's like it comes through so clear, but you're like, no, wait a second, that was just my human brain thinking that.
Now, how have these cards been received? Like, what is the feedback you've been getting involved?
Humbly speaking too, because I never want this to sound egotistical, but it's blowing my mind. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I really, truly didn't know what was going to happen. And I just recently put out pre-orders, and the first day of orders, my PayPal crashed because so many orders were coming in.
Oh, wow. That just gave me willies from head to toe.
Yeah, I didn't even know
so
that was
cool.
a thing. So, yeah, so it brings, it's a bit of a tearjerker for me because I didn't know.
Wow, willies from head to toe still. But that's exactly what we've been talking about, is when you align with what you truly came here to do and you get the hell out of the way, Spirit will put those little Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs in front of you. And I mean, you got some big old crumbs, but oh, that's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So I just really hope it helps. I mean, I put out the first edition, and it seems like a lot of the feedback that I've got is like it's really helping to allow people's intuition to come through. And that's really, that is such an amazing, like, it's humbling. It really is humbling to know that, like, I don't know, it's hard to process that sometimes, because it goes again back, Denise, to what you're saying. It was like, why me? Like, what, how come I was the one that got chosen for this? Like, what's so special about me?
You just nailed it, because you have the the physical ability to do the art, you have the connection to divine, but you're also, I think the number one reason this is going in the direction it is because you're making it a way to be of service. You're saying, how can I help other people connect with their own inner knowing and light? This isn't, oh, you need my cards to do this, to be like me. This is more, what gift can I give to you to help you access your own inner knowing? That's absolutely beautiful.
Well, when life feels like it's going really good and you're excited, every time I get that feeling, I'm like, I just want everybody to feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
I want everybody to feel this way. So that's just like, for me, it was like, this deck has been so healing that I want everybody to have that, and I'm not silly and I'm foolish and understand that it's not going to connect with everybody, but it's just that, if there's one way that I can give that gift to one person, it's just, that's the part that
it's your way of raising the vibration.
Yeah, I suppose.
Exactly. Now, you also have a YouTube channel, Jillian C. Wilde with an E, and we'll post links on our Facebook page to that.
Yeah, so I actually haven't started on that. It's something that I have the intention of getting onto. Just, life gets away on you. It feels like there's 1,000 projects that are on the go. So it's definitely something that I want to do. It comes back to that, I think, back to that place of service where it can feel overwhelming when you start. And I think there's got to be a way that I just want to make it fun and simplified so that I think whenever you try something new or are called in a different direction, it's intimidating when you first get there. And when you can start something that feels a bit more simplified, then you feel like you're enjoying it, and then I think you feel more encouraged to keep growing it. So that's kind of where I want to start with my YouTube. It's just give some basics, maybe some thoughts of things that you don't think of, or how to simplify and make things easier.
Well, and like we were saying before we started the show, it's a calling to teach people how to do this for themselves rather than relying on other readers, which I think is such a great focus.
Oh, absolutely. I think the more empowered you are, the more you're going to be living in alignment with yourself, and the more you're going to have to be able to share with others.
Exactly. And if you people go to your website, JillianCWilde.com, people can see a lot of images of your cards, which I love. I'm kind of a card junkie, and I hate it if I go to order a deck and it shows no pictures of what the cards look like. Don't you guys hate that?
Mm-hmm. Or when the box is so beautiful and then you open the deck and you're like, oh,
yes,
this isn't what I was expecting.
Yeah. It's like, what are you guys
sounds
thinking?
Like a terrible thing to say, but
it's honest, and it happens all the time. But if you guys go to JillianCWilde.com, she has a lot of the beautiful photos of the cards on her website, and you have an Instagram that's also Jillian C. Wilde, and a lot of the cards are on there as well. So there's a lot of ways that people can connect with you, which I think is great, and a lot of ways that people can see what this deck looks like for themselves. And the best way for them to order it, is it on your website? Is that the best way?
Yes, at the moment.
Okay, fantastic. Do you have any other questions, Denise, before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for sharing your gift and your light.
Well, I have to thank you both for that too, because I just feel absolutely honored that I got the opportunity to talk to both of you. And can I just quickly say one thing?
Yes.
I just want to say to anybody that is out there that is going through any struggles or any painful stuff in their life right now, I send lots of love and light to you and say prayers for you, that I hope that you can find some peace through what you're going through.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Denise and I concur and add our prayers to that heartfelt intention. I think it's important for people to know that even if they are going through a tower or a hanged man experience, that there are like-minded light workers and intuitives and just other humans out there who are praying and connecting with you. Thank you for saying that. And thank you so much for being on our show and for generously sharing your decks with Denise and me. I really enjoyed getting to know mine. The guidebook that comes with the deck is almost 300 pages, so it's really in-depth and thorough, and lots of explanations of of what the cards mean and what the symbols on the cards mean. So we recommend that you guys go to her website and check it out and see if it resonates for you. And we hope that you can come back on our show when you come out with this new deck you briefly mentioned.
Oh my goodness, I look forward to the day.
That would be awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I will post links to Jillian's website and Instagram page on our Facebook page, which you can find at Enlightened Empaths. If you have a question or a story you want to share with Denise and me, please feel free to email it to us, enlightenedempaths@gmail.com, or you can just message us on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening to our show this week and learning more about our guest, Jillian C. Wilde. In the meantime, we hope that you always remember to show up, do great work, and share your light. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.